Rona Barbour, thank you so much for joining us here at the Chennai Storytelling Festival. Please introduce yourself fully, tell us about your work, and please tell us a story.
Thank you, Eric. It's a delight to be here, and I feel quite honoured actually to be able to be telling stories to people across the world. And I think the work that you do is just incredible. The work that I do stopped quite some time ago in earnest, because I'm now almost 75. So I try and take it a little bit easier. But you can never stop storytelling, as you know. When it's in your blood, it's in your blood. I spent quite a lot of my working years working with young people who were disadvantaged in one way or another. And I found storytelling to be an incredible tool to work with these young people who'd never really had access to storytelling before. So this was a big thing. It was work that I really enjoyed, so I still do it, but on a much, much lesser scale. I find that storytelling takes people to a whole different place. And if they've got any kind of things going on in their life, there's always something in a story that can help them. It can inspire them or motivate them or heal. You know, it's just incredible, the power of storytelling. And I have found that because I've had storytelling all of my life. I was born into a kind of dynasty of storytellers, if you like, because we go way back for a long time, way back to the 1800s. My father was a fantastic storyteller, and he used to tell us stories every night. One of the things that was incredible about my father's storytelling was the fact that he was blind, but it did not seem to curb his imagination in any way, shape or form. He could tell the most incredible stories and build the pictures in our heads as children. So the story I'd like to tell you today, I'll say today because I've no idea what time it is where half the people might be listening to this smaller audience at this time in the morning, as Eric says, because there's people still in bed fast asleep. But I'll tell you this story because it sprung to mind. A lot of my storytelling friends at the moment are in Marrakesh at a festival there. And every time I hear the word Marrakesh or Morocco, I think of the souks, the marketplaces there. And this was a story about a young woman who used to frequent the marketplace. She was a particularly beautiful young woman and stood out even in a crowd in a country where most of the women were beautiful anyway. And she had only one thing in her mind, which was to be taken away from that place and taken to a grand city somewhere where she could live a life of luxury and leisure. She thought that she was deemed for that because of her beauty. And she incredibly knew almost everybody in this particular souk, in this particular marketplace. It was a town rather than a village, so there were lots of people. And she seemed to know everybody, and everybody knew her because all she did all day was walk around the marketplace speaking to people. Do you think this might be the day? Do you think this will be the day that my knight in shining armor will come and sweep me off my feet and take me to the kind of life that I deserve? And people just used to smile and say, well, maybe it's today. And some of them felt sorry for her because what kind of life was that to have? And others used to get quite irritated by her because she thought that her beauty was everything and nothing else was more important in life than what you looked like. And the storyteller in particular in the marketplace felt sorry for this young woman, but at the same time was also quite irritated by her because she never seemed to understand what was the most important thing in life. And one day, when she said for the umpteenth time to the storyteller, do you think this will be the day that my love will come? And the storyteller says, what do you know about love? Well, what do you mean? What do I know about love? Well, I think that somebody's going to come, and when they see me, he's going to fall in love with me and take me away to a better life. Oh, so you think that's love? Well, yes. Is it not? Look, she said, and the young woman parted her blouse and showed her heart, which became visible incredibly. And it was perfect. It was unblemished in any way. Absolutely beautiful, this perfect heart. And the storyteller looked at her. She said, that's not a perfect heart, my dear. Why not? What's wrong with it? Well, don't you see, excuse me, perfect heart looks like this. And she exposed her heart. And oh my goodness me, it was battered and torn, and bits were missing and bits were squeezed in where they didn't really fit. And the young woman was horrified. She said, this is not perfect heart. It looks dreadful. And the storyteller said, doesn't matter what it looks like, my dear. It's what it feels like that matters. The reason my heart looks like this is because every time somebody gives me a little piece of their heart, I have to find somewhere to put it. I have to squeeze it into that little space or this little space. Your heart has no love attached. But how do I get this love? Well, you have to give it first. Oh, I see. And if I give some love, I will get some love. The storyteller said, yes. Will you give me some of your love? And the storyteller said, I would dearly live to give you some of my love. But where would it go? I don't know. Think about it, my dear. If I want to give you some of my love, where will you put it? If I give you some of mine, you can give me some of yours. Yes, my dear, that's how it works. And the young woman was absolutely blown away by this. I had no idea. And I'd been looking for my love all of this time, and it could never come until there was somewhere for it to go. Yes, now you have the message. Well, from that day on, that young woman went about telling everybody about love and showing them her heart and showing her less than perfect heart now. And the more she gave away, the more she got. Did she ever find her knight in shining armor? That's a different story for another time. And that is the power of love. Love can only exist if you have first given it away, and then it will come back to you. And that's why storytelling is so powerful. I have never met a storyteller yet who is not willing to give, whether it's give their story or give their heart. It's the same thing. You've got to feel and know what love is before you can become a storyteller, because it's all about sharing and caring and inclusivity. So that's my story for this morning.
Thank you. Very beautiful story. Now, is that a traditional story?
Well, the problem I have with storytelling is that when somebody tells me a story, oh, I grasp it and I hold on to it. And maybe 5 years later, I'll retell it, but I won't necessarily remember it the way it was told to me. So I will retell it. And that's, of course, what happens with stories. They travel and they change. And there's really only 7 basic plots in storytelling, as you know, and then they'll just stretch and grow. So that particular story I love because I think it has a powerful message. And I do remember that there is another story out there about the heart. I heard it from somebody else at another time, so it's not my story, but that's just my version of it. And I hope people will take it and share it and tell it themselves.
It reminds me of the criticism of some of the princesses in the at least in the Disney versions of fairy tales, where the criticism is that the princess is in a passive mode, waiting to be rescued.
Yeah, yes. A bit like Rapunzel, who's waiting in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the princesses never seem to think of anything. Excuse me. Is there time for me to tell you a little twisted version of a Disney story?
Yes.
It's quite short.
Go ahead.
Well, you'll know about mermaids. Yes, I think just about everybody has heard about the mermaid, especially the one created by Disney. She's beautiful, gorgeous red or blonde hair, big green eyes, gorgeous little hourglass figure, well, top half anyway, little shell bra, and this magnificent tail. She doesn't exist. She never existed. There is no such thing. However, there is a sea creature, and she is terrifying. She's called the siren. And in every country around the world, the emergency vehicles all make themselves known by the sound of the siren. And that's where it came from. But back in time, that noise could be heard coming from the seas. When the sisters got together, the sirens would climb up onto the rocks and they would sing, make their voices more pleasant to draw the sailors or the fishermen towards them. And then when they got nearer, they would shriek and shrill, and their voices would be so incredibly loud that the ships would be drawn onto the rocks, and the sirens would then pillage and take everything they wanted. And they would end up by eating the fishermen or the sailors and spitting their bones back into the sea. And I know this is true because I live in Scotland, where the North Sea is absolutely incredible. It's harsh, it's freezing cold, and that tiny, delicate little mermaid could never exist in those seas. In those seas, you'll find the siren. And I was always warned as a child, don't go in the water. But of course, as children, you usually disobey those orders. And I was in the sea at one point up to my knees. I never usually went very much further than that because I too was afraid of the sea. But it was that kind of fear that you had to test it every now and again. And one day I was in as far as my waist and I slipped and fell. And as I fell under the water, I saw this thing coming towards me. It was terrifying. A head that mouth couldn't even close because the teeth were so big. The eyes were bright red, arms flailing about and a huge tail flailing behind it. And I turned and fled and swam as fast as I could back to land. And I got out of the sea. Well, almost, because that siren nipped the little toe on my right foot and it bled. It bled into the North Sea. So my blood's still there and she's still looking for me. So I will never go back into that sea to confront that mermaid ever again. And that's how Disney's stories get distorted. He paints these wonderful pictures, and some of them just don't exist. But that story was told by Walt Disney so that people wouldn't be afraid of these dark sea creatures that live in the North Sea called sirens. Actually, they're all over the world, but the ones in the North Sea are particularly dreadful because they live in that deep, dark, cold water. Yeah. Anybody got any questions or? No, it's all gone very quiet.
Rona, I have a question. I love the Selkie stories, and I sometimes tell Selkie stories. What is the difference or any similarities between the sirens that you spoke of and the Selkies? I mean, Selkies are seals, yes.
Selkies, no. Selkies are seals, yeah. You have the Selkies and you have the Kelpies, who are the horses. Do you know about the Kelpies? Yes. So, no, all right. Well, there's a city in Scotland called Falkirk, and there's a magnificent set of statues there that are built out of steel, and it's two huge steel horses. And Kelpies are seahorses who, the tradition of the story of the Kelpies is that if you have been a good person, then, and you find yourself in trouble at sea, the Kelpies will rescue you and bring you back on horseback. But if you've not been a good person, they will pull you under the water and you will drown. So it's the story of, I mean, it's the same old thing, why children are told stories in the first place. If you're good, this will happen. And if you're bad, that will happen, you know. And the Selkies and the Kelpies, there are good and bad in both of them. The Selkie story, the most famous one, obviously, is the Selkie who discards her seal coat and becomes this beautiful woman. Yeah. So they are quite magnificent stories. And of course, a story can go anywhere. Once the story is in your head and you start to tell that story, it's on a journey, and it depends where you take it, where that story goes. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did that answer the question?
Yeah, and Rona, maybe if I could get your email, perhaps from Eric. I do have a few questions. I won't take the other people's time right now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Rona, thank you so much. You've added an element of mystery to us this afternoon, or this morning.
Yeah, good. Always willing to share it, Eric. That's my philosophy of storytelling.
Thank you very much.